Trapped in your car? This hidden escape trick can save you. There are moments in modern driving where a vehicle, normally associated with safety and control, can suddenly become a confined space where every second begins to matter. According to emergency response reports and traffic safety data, situations such as electrical failure, accidental locking systems, flooding incidents, or post-collision door jams have all been documented as scenarios where occupants were temporarily unable to exit a vehicle. In these moments, what appears to be a simple mechanical issue can quickly become a situation requiring urgent problem-solving under stress. But here's the question. If a car suddenly becomes locked from the inside or the doors stop responding, do most people actually know the correct legal and safe way to escape, or are they relying on assumptions that may not work in a real emergency? Let me know your answer in the comments below. According to automotive safety research and transportation safety authorities, modern vehicles are designed with multiple layered safety systems intended to prevent occupants from being trapped. These systems include mechanical door releases, electronic unlocking mechanisms, and in some cases, emergency override functions. However, despite these built-in features, real-world incident reports show that confusion during emergencies is common. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and similar transportation safety bodies in different regions have documented cases where individuals involved in accidents were unable to immediately locate or operate manual release mechanisms. In high-stress situations, even familiar systems may become difficult to use due to panic, reduced visibility, or physical obstruction. It is important to understand that vehicle entrapment scenarios are not always dramatic in nature. They can occur in several different contexts. In some reported cases, electronic locking systems malfunction due to electrical failure following a collision. In others, doors become misaligned due to impact forces, making them difficult or impossible to open normally. There are also situations where safety child locks unintentionally prevent rear passengers from exiting. According to automotive safety engineering principles, these systems are designed with specific protective intentions. Child safety locks, for example, are intended to prevent accidental door opening from inside the vehicle. However, in emergency situations, if the driver is incapacitated or unable to unlock the system, passengers may face difficulty exiting without external assistance. From a legal and regulatory standpoint, vehicle manufacturers are required to meet safety standards that include emergency egress considerations. These standards vary by jurisdiction but generally focus on ensuring that occupants can exit the vehicle under a reasonable range of conditions, including post-collision scenarios. One interpretation of these regulations is that vehicles must balance security, safety, and usability. Another perspective raised in automotive safety discussions is that increasing electronic complexity in modern vehicles may sometimes introduce additional points of failure during emergencies. For example, as vehicles rely more heavily on electronic control systems, traditional mechanical backups may become less intuitive or less immediately accessible to the average user. This does not mean modern vehicles are unsafe. In fact, according to crash safety statistics, modern cars are significantly safer in terms of collision protection compared to older models. However, the interaction between safety systems and human behavior in rare emergency situations remains an area of ongoing study. This is for informational purposes only and not legal or safety advice. In documented emergency response training scenarios, one of the most consistent findings is that time and clarity are critical factors during entrapment situations. When individuals are under stress, cognitive processing can be affected, leading to delayed recognition of available escape options. In some cases, occupants may attempt repeated actions that are ineffective simply because they are relying on instinct rather than system knowledge. Automotive safety education programs often emphasize the importance of familiarization with vehicle features. This includes understanding manual door release mechanisms, emergency exits where applicable, and how electronic locking systems respond under different conditions. However, surveys and transportation safety research suggest that a significant portion of drivers are not fully aware of all emergency features in their own vehicles. This gap between system design and user understanding is one of the key concerns highlighted in safety discussions. Because in an emergency, the effectiveness of a safety feature depends not only on its existence, but also on whether the occupant knows how to use it under pressure. Another important factor in entrapment scenarios is environmental context. For instance, in flooding incidents, vehicles may become partially submerged, affecting both electrical systems and door functionality. In such situations, water pressure differences can make it difficult to open doors immediately, which is why emergency protocols often emphasize rapid response. In collision scenarios, structural deformation of the vehicle frame can also impact door alignment. This is particularly relevant in high-impact crashes where force distribution affects multiple parts of the vehicle body. According to crash analysis studies, the severity of entrapment risk often depends on the nature of the impact, rather than a single mechanical failure. From a legal perspective, transportation safety regulations generally require manufacturers to conduct testing under various crash conditions to ensure that emergency exits remain functional where possible. However, no system can guarantee accessibility in every possible scenario, especially in extreme conditions. As a result, safety guidance often shifts toward preparation and awareness rather than reliance on a single mechanism. In many official safety education materials, the emphasis is placed on understanding your vehicle before an emergency occurs. This includes knowing how doors, windows, and locking systems operate both electronically and manually. From one perspective, this knowledge is considered basic driver responsibility. From another perspective, some safety advocates argue that manufacturers could do more to standardize emergency controls across different vehicle models to reduce confusion. This ongoing discussion reflects a broader issue in transportation safety, the balance between innovation and simplicity. As vehicles become more technologically advanced, user interfaces become more complex. Touch-based controls, electronic locks, and integrated systems improve convenience, but may also require more familiarity to operate effectively under stress. This raises an important question within safety research. How can systems remain both advanced and intuitively usable in emergencies? As we continue this investigation, the next section will explore real-world case patterns, how emergency responders approach vehicle entrapment situations, and what legal and safety frameworks say about occupant protection during unexpected system failures. Because understanding the system is only one part of the equation. The other part is understanding how humans actually respond when that system is suddenly put to the test. As we move deeper into real-world analysis, it becomes important to understand how vehicle entrapment situations actually unfold outside of theory. Because according to emergency response data and traffic incident reports, most trapped in a vehicle cases are not caused by a single catastrophic failure, but by a chain of smaller compounding events that occur under stress. In documented crash response summaries, emergency personnel often describe a similar pattern. An incident occurs, such as a collision, electrical malfunction, or sudden system failure, and immediately afterward, occupants attempt to exit the vehicle using familiar controls. However, under stress, familiar actions do not always produce expected results. According to behavioral studies in emergency psychology, high-stress situations can significantly affect cognitive function. Even simple tasks, such as locating a door handle or identifying a manual release, may take longer than usual when panic sets in. This is not due to lack of intelligence or awareness, but due to how the human brain prioritizes survival under pressure. In survival psychology, this is often referred to as cognitive narrowing, where attention becomes focused on the immediate problem rather than available alternatives. From one interpretation, this explains why individuals in real incidents may repeatedly attempt the same ineffective action, such as pulling an electronic door switch, even when mechanical alternatives exist nearby. Another perspective raised in emergency training analysis suggests that unfamiliarity plays a major role. While drivers may use their vehicle daily, they often interact with only a limited set of functions under normal conditions. Emergency mechanisms are rarely used, which means muscle memory does not develop for those actions. This gap becomes critical during sudden incidents. According to transportation safety reports, some entrapment scenarios involve post-collision electrical failure. In these cases, electronic locking systems may temporarily stop responding due to disrupted power supply or system resets triggered by impact sensors. Modern vehicles are designed with multiple safety redundancies, but in certain conditions, those systems may still behave unpredictably until reset or externally assisted. It is important to note that automotive safety engineering continues to evolve with these risks in mind. Manufacturers conduct extensive crash testing, including side impact, rollover, and frontal collision simulations, to ensure that occupants have multiple potential exit points. However, real-world conditions are not always identical to controlled testing environments. For example, vehicle deformation during high-impact crashes may physically obstruct door movement. In other cases, external environmental factors, such as water submersion or fire exposure, can further complicate exit attempts. In flooding-related incidents, documented emergency response protocols indicate that water pressure can temporarily make it difficult to open doors immediately after submersion. This is due to pressure differences between the interior and exterior of the vehicle. Over time, as pressure equalizes, doors may become easier to open, but the critical factor is timing and awareness. According to safety training guidelines used by emergency services, rapid decision-making in the first moments of an incident can significantly influence outcomes. However, these guidelines also emphasize that panic often disrupts logical assessment. From a behavioral standpoint, this creates a challenging contradiction. The moment when action is most needed is also the moment when clear thinking is most difficult. This is for informational purposes only and not emergency or safety instruction. Another important factor in these situations is user awareness of vehicle-specific systems. According to automotive safety education surveys, many drivers are not fully familiar with all manual override mechanisms in their own vehicles. This includes mechanical door releases that may function independently of electronic systems. In some vehicles, these manual releases are located in non-intuitive positions, sometimes requiring prior knowledge or reference to the vehicle manual. From a design perspective, this placement is often influenced by safety engineering constraints, child safety requirements, and internal structural layout. However, from a user perspective, lack of familiarity can create confusion during emergencies. One interpretation of this issue is that modern vehicle design prioritizes automation and convenience, which may reduce the frequency of manual interaction with safety systems. Another perspective suggests that while automation improves daily usability, it may unintentionally reduce emergency readiness if users are not educated about backup systems. In legal and regulatory frameworks, manufacturers are required to meet specific safety standards that include occupant escape feasibility under defined conditions. However, these standards typically assume a baseline level of user awareness. This introduces an important distinction. A system can be technically safe, but still difficult to use effectively without prior knowledge. According to transportation safety analysis, this gap between design and user understanding is a recurring theme in modern vehicle safety discussions. It does not indicate failure of engineering, but rather highlights the importance of education alongside design. As we examine real-world case patterns further, emergency responders often emphasize a consistent observation. The presence of an available solution does not guarantee its immediate use. In high-stress situations, individuals may overlook simple mechanical options due to focus on electronic controls or familiar interfaces. This behavioral tendency has been documented across multiple emergency scenarios, not just in vehicles, but also in aviation, industrial safety, and residential emergencies. It reflects a broader principle of human behavior under pressure. People tend to default to what they know best, even if alternative solutions are available nearby. As we continue this investigation, the next section will focus on the most critical part of this topic: the specific escape mechanisms built into modern vehicles, how they function under different failure conditions, and why understanding them beforehand can significantly change outcomes in rare emergency situations. Because in many documented cases, the difference between confusion and clarity comes down to one factor: prior awareness. And that awareness is often what determines how effectively a situation is resolved. As we reach the final part of this investigation, the focus shifts toward what vehicle safety systems actually exist for escape, and why understanding them beforehand can make a critical difference in rare emergency situations. According to automotive safety engineering standards, most modern vehicles are designed with multiple layers of redundancy specifically to prevent complete occupant entrapment. These typically include mechanical door release systems, window operation backups in certain models, and structural design features intended to maintain at least one viable exit path after a collision. However, the presence of these systems alone does not guarantee immediate usability in every situation. Because according to transportation safety research, the effectiveness of emergency features depends heavily on one key factor: whether the occupant knows how to access them under stress. In many documented safety training programs, emergency responders emphasize that vehicles almost always include manual override mechanisms for doors and windows. These systems are designed to function even when electronic controls fail. But in real-world incidents, awareness of these mechanisms varies significantly among drivers and passengers. From one perspective, this reflects a gap in user education. People become highly familiar with everyday vehicle functions, such as ignition systems, infotainment controls, and automatic locks, but rarely interact with emergency release systems during normal use. Another perspective raised in safety design analysis suggests that modern vehicle interfaces prioritize convenience and automation, which may unintentionally reduce familiarity with manual systems over time. This does not indicate a design flaw in itself. Instead, it highlights a broader issue in human-system interaction. The less frequently a system is used, the less intuitive it becomes under pressure. According to emergency response case summaries, when individuals do manage to resolve entrapment situations, success is often linked to prior awareness rather than improvisation. For example, occupants who had previously familiarized themselves with manual door mechanisms or emergency window functions tend to respond more quickly during unexpected events. In contrast, those encountering these systems for the first time during an emergency may experience delay due to confusion or uncertainty. It is important to understand that in high-stress situations, time perception can also be affected. According to behavioral science research, individuals under acute stress may perceive time as moving faster than it actually is, while simultaneously experiencing reduced clarity in decision-making. This combination can lead to hesitation or repeated attempts at ineffective actions. From a legal and safety framework perspective, manufacturers are generally required to ensure that emergency exit options exist and meet regulatory standards. However, regulations typically assume a reasonable level of user familiarity with the vehicle's features. This creates a shared responsibility dynamic between design and user awareness. One interpretation of this framework is that manufacturers provide the system, but users are expected to understand basic functionality. Another perspective suggests that as vehicle systems become more complex, the responsibility for user education becomes increasingly important. This is for informational purposes only, and not legal or safety advice. In documented rescue operations, emergency responders often highlight a consistent pattern. When occupants remain calm and quickly identify mechanical override options, outcomes improve significantly. However, when panic dominates the situation, even simple mechanisms may be overlooked temporarily. This reinforces a key principle found across emergency response disciplines. Preparedness is not only about the existence of safety systems, but about familiarity with them before they are needed. As we bring this investigation to a close, the broader conclusion becomes clear. Vehicle entrapment scenarios are rare, but when they do occur, they test both engineering design and human behavior at the same time. Modern vehicles are equipped with multiple safety features intended to prevent prolonged entrapment, but the effectiveness of those features depends on awareness, timing, and calm decision-making under pressure. From a psychological standpoint, the greatest challenge is not the mechanical system itself, but the human response to unexpected stress. Because in many documented cases, the difference between confusion and resolution comes down to seconds of clarity. And that clarity often depends on prior understanding. So when we look at everything together, the engineering design, the safety regulations, the real-world incidents, and the human behavior patterns, one thing becomes clear. The question is not just whether vehicles are safe, it is whether people are prepared to use safety systems when it matters most. Because in rare moments of emergency, knowledge becomes just as important as design. Given all the facts, do you think most drivers are actually aware of how to escape their own vehicle in a real emergency? Or is this something that deserves more public awareness and education? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this investigation helpful, make sure to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss future deep dive breakdowns like this. Also, let me know in the comments what topic you want next. Your suggestion might become the next full investigative video. Thanks for watching. Stay aware, stay prepared, and I'll see you in the next one.